He says that when Bayan Jabber was Interior Minister, everyone was too scared to talk. But last summer, he was promoted to a new job. Suddenly, people inside his old ministry started handing over files. These show how the police themselves became the death squads during Jabber's time in power. Then he shows us a highly confidential report from military intelligence. It describes how last February they caught 18 police commandos with 2 civilians they'd just kidnapped. The police say their own senior officers gave them names of people they wanted picked up, some of whom are later found dead. And this is their confession, or is this the report of the investigation?
This is the report of the investigation.
Okay. The report also says the senior officers who ordered the kidnapping belong to a Shia militia group called the Badr Brigade, and that's the military wing of Bayan Jabber's own political party. We will copy it and I will give it to you to get back to him, okay? Thank you. Do you want me to kit up again, or you do? Okay. With the armed guards in the back, we leave the compound. Mohammed Al-Daini comes too, our personal guarantor in case we're stopped by Sunni insurgents.
هذا جينا بطريق رجعنا بطريق مو نفس اللي جينا به موضوع الحماية.
This is a different way.
We're going back a different way.
دقيقة بس دقيقة.
He says another 50 armed men we can't see are blocking off the side roads to protect our route. A roadblock and police in camouflage uniforms.
يعني لا يظل عندكم شك شيء. أخوي أنا محمد دايني عضو مجلس النواب العراقي. مرحبا أخي. هلا.
Who are these guys?
Megawir.
These were Megawir. That's the name for the police commandos, the force running the secret prisons and kidnapping people to order. We're driving right past one of their headquarters.
كثير من العراقيين في زمن صالح.
In this place there were many Iraqis who were murdered or raped during Salah era.
We're heading back to our hotel inside the green zone. Will you say thank you to his guys who've looked after us as well? Thank you. Shukran jazilan. The Al Rashid used to be the poshest hotel in Baghdad. It took a battering during the American invasion. But at least there's electricity, unlike most Iraqi homes, and it's a safe place to hear more evidence about Bayan Jabber's time as minister. The only place that we can talk to you on. Ada Usairan was a human rights minister in the last government. Her team kept bringing her reports of torture inside the Interior Ministry itself.
So I didn't believe them because it's a ministry that belongs to the government and the Interior Minister has to know about it. So not the second time, the third time I said, can I come with you?
Inside she found dozens of people being abused. The story of one woman horrified her above all others.
She told me that she was raped 3 times in the same building.
Do you think it happened?
Yes, I did. Because she was crying, weeping. She was not acting. And she was still there for 3 weeks. Why was she still there?
And the people who she said were raping her, who were they?
They are the policemen and the security people who were in the Interior Ministry.
Ada Usairan lived in exile in Britain for over 20 years after Saddam murdered her son. She calls herself a secular liberal democrat, totally opposed to religion in politics. She confronted Bayan Jabber about the abuse in his ministry, and he said he'd sort it out. Was the suggestion that he was saying, I admit this is happening, but it's just a few bad people in my ministry?
No, he didn't mention that word, that I admit that this is happening. No, he apologized for what happened, and he said, I don't know about it. I heard from I read your report, and I will look after what's happening.
So he said he didn't know what was happening on the 6th floor of his own ministry?
No, of course, yes.
Did you believe that?
No. No.
But Iraqis aren't the only ones concerned about Bayan Jabbar. We've also tracked down a number of other people who worked in Iraq and witnessed the growth of the death squads. 2 years ago, Bayan Jabbar's first job in government was Minister of Housing and Construction, and Mike Karam was his senior American advisor.
He was articulate, he was well-groomed, well-dressed, meticulously dressed, spoke English when he wanted to. And he was surrounded by these group of men that were his own private bodyguards. And there were hundreds of them. They were dressed in black, a black shirt, black pants, shoes, but they were all armed.
So this was almost like a private army?
It was a private army.
This is the Housing Ministry, and Mike Karam says the new minister soon made his presence felt.
He went in there and did a cleansing, and the people who had been Sunnis, people of other religions, they pushed them out. And we noticed this movement of bringing Shia into the main positions within the ministry. Everybody did.
Bayan Jabbar spent years in exile in Iran, which funded both the party he belonged to and its military wing, the Badr Brigade. Their common aim was to overthrow Saddam and his Sunni government, until the Americans did it for them. Rick Clay was another advisor to the new minister.
This was a very powerful position to have. Roads, bridges, hospitals, palaces, mosques, everything is designed and built, and military bases are all built out of the Ministry of Housing and Construction.
But corruption was a huge problem. The Grand Mosque, which Saddam had started, was one of several projects where millions of dollars worth of materials and equipment were going missing, while the ministry guards did nothing.
And it wasn't at nighttime, it was in broad daylight. It wasn't mom and pop with a screwdriver and a pair of pliers. This was very well organized. Everything was documented about the corruption, about the theft of equipment, about our suspicions that he was taking the Ministry of Housing and turning it into a Shia operation with these Badr forces.
Mike and Rick put together a damning report about Jabbar's ministry for their own American bosses. They wanted him replaced, but instead they were the ones who were sacked.
What happened was quite a bit of a shock when we got there. When we got there, they decided that Mike and I needed to be replaced, they saw it as being ineffective in dealing with the minister. They decided they were going to keep him, and it was probably more politically expedient to ship us out at that particular time.
Mike and Rick didn't talk about what happened for over 2 years. But after Bayan Jabbar was promoted to Interior Minister and reports grew about death squads, they became too angry to keep quiet.
Every time I see him on TV, it gnaws at my very soul. You know, I've talked to so many people in Department of State, in DOD, the intelligence communities that have dealt with this man, and they feel the same way. This man should not be there.
They knew that the guy was doing all this. Now, they may not have liked what I said. They may not have liked me. But how in the hell do you keep him? And you let him continue till now we're at the point of a civil war.
Baghdad certainly feels like a city being ripped apart by civil war. In the last year, the pattern of killing has changed. The Sunni insurgents continue to attack the Americans and anyone cooperating with them. But much of the violence now is sectarian and comes from the Shia militia groups with police backing. To reach their victims, we're working with an Iraqi journalist who has to be anonymous for his own safety. Abdullah's been living in London for the last few months and barely recognizes his own city.
This is the Al-Mansur district. It looks like Oxford Street in London. It used to be very, very crowded of people who came to the restaurant, do shopping, and like these things. Everywhere there is a lorry or a vehicle carrying a family. This vehicle is carrying the furniture of a family who flee also from the violence. During the Sunnis